We'll let you take 4.2 off.
I was gonna say, I kind of think from everybody, like, I was like, yes, you can read, so it's complete. All right, what about 4.3? Funding, create a funding mechanism for park maintenance and development.
Would that be under, could we put that under Dave or 4.1? Those discussions.
You have two things going on here. I would recommend leaving this on because this is your operations and maintenance. 4.1 is your capital. That's your constructed. But then with your constructed and the master plan touches very deeply on this, you gotta maintain it. So how do we do that? So there's two objectives here that I would recommend leaving this for.
Good. Ongoing, but we really didn't do anything on that this year because we didn't have anything on 4.1, no new. So we didn't really dive into funding mechanism yet.
All right, so it needs to
So
be
I guess
ongoing.
you're right. I mean, you do have hand development. I think that maybe the end development comes off and shifts into 4.1. But I still think that the funding, improve the funding mechanism for the maintenance or something.
Improve, okay.
Some terminology along those lines.
Yes. So we can refine it.
Yeah, maintenance and improvements.
Because as you build more parks, if you're not matching your maintenance costs to fair, your parks are gonna come at a sacrifice because they're not gonna be maintained well enough. Because right now, they only have 1.6 bodies, I think they have some fees to maintain them. You keep adding acreage, you're gonna fall behind, so.
Can you put the ADA part in with that? I mean, so it's, or do you want that like that all by itself?
I like it separate.
Keep it separate.
Well, that's the thing, is if it's separate, it comes above kind of 4.1. So when you go in those discussions, that becomes the pre-existing priority would be that.
We were targeting ADA specific.
Yeah. It's different.
Is that something that is continuing to be a priority? Okay, so then we'll keep 4.4. Okay. All right. Okay. There might be new things to add that we'll talk about, but let's move on to infrastructure.
4.1. Are you going to do the new one?
That one's new.
So she's saying go back to the new later.
Yeah, so let's just, I mean, I can post to the group. What do you want to do? Do you want to talk about those things since we're kind of.
Well,
Well, we have one for parks specifically, which is to
Oh,
update
okay.
the parks SDC.
I think we're working off two different lists.
I think we are
Because
too.
you have the list of,
This is not inclusive of staff.
yeah, so we're
Right,
working
so
off
you're
of our.
looking at their,
Oh,
you're
their
looking at your
actual current.
summary. We're looking at.
I didn't, okay.
Yeah.
I can just pull it out for you.
Yeah, is that okay?
Yeah. I wrote it
Okay,
down.
that would be great. Okay,
4.4 the green.
okay. Thank you. All right, so 4.4, parks SDC update?
Yeah. Once the master plan is adopted, which needs to occur first, then we can go into updating the SDCs, which would reflect, a funding, making sure our funding is in line with the projects that we're gonna be.
You can get it up, that, we don't have to give you any specific goal or direction right now. We got it.
know what that.
Yeah,
Okay.
It's a
yeah,
specific.
that is
about
very
that.
specific.
Are you saying it does or does not need to be a goal?
It does.
It does.
It's gonna cost money to,
It's
and
gonna
take
be-
a lot of time.
It's going to take a lot.
How is that different from it being on 4.3? It's actually there's this update for SDs based on.
So we're looking at this longer list.
Yeah, but how is that different?
It's 4.4.
Parks SDC.
4.3 is the ADA tool on the system.
Yeah, we're having confusion because 4.4 on the staff one is not
Yeah.
the same as 4.4
Oh,
on
sorry.
the consultants.
So
The
how is
green
that
one.
different under the create new funding mechanisms and can we take that out?
So usually an SDC study or update will come after a master plan because you've updated your capital improvement project list. So it's pretty standard that we do that after each master plan. So I think the thought was that when we were talking about new funding mechanisms, we're not really looking at SDCs as a new funding mechanism. It's something we currently collect, but we need to reassess them.
Right. I think before it was under that specific line was under a goal.
Okay, so
And
when
now we're separating. them.
when the goal was written, we didn't have a new plan to do the work. Now that we've done the plan and can do the work, Now we're asking to pull that aside and prioritize doing that particular piece of work. So when this goal of create a funding mechanism was written, we didn't have the Parks Master Plan complete, so we didn't have the CIP to update the SDCs. Because this goal could go away or change, but we want to pull the SDCs separate.
I'm in favor of adding 4.4.
Well, fine.
Yeah.
4.5, the numbers got off.
I don't understand where the numbers are getting up, because I,
Yeah, it's all-
so it says we got implement the Parks and Recreation plan, or sorry, the adopt it, and then this was the peace candle, 4.2.
Yep.
4.3 is the funding mechanism. 4.3 is ADA.
No,
4.4 is.
Well, so on the copy you have, I
Oh,
removed the
you have it.
numbers because we were proposing to remove it.
once
And
we erased
reorganize.
one, they took it out and they went back to four
Okay,
point two.
so I just want to make sure, okay.
So because of the removal of the candles.
So right, 4.4 for EDA. Or,
In our old one, it was 4.4, but in the new one, we couldn't move up to 4.3 because
Yeah.
4.2 will leave.
Got it. Okay, so let's not get caught up on the
Yeah.
numbers, let's just make sure that the content
Yeah.
is there. Is
You
there
have
all the
everything.
content there?
Yeah.
Okay, so am I hearing, we're gonna keep, I heard we're gonna keep ADA here, so now we're talking about the Parks SDC update. Is that similar with the park maintenance fund?
No,
No.
So it needs to be
it's
separate.
separate.
Okay, and I'm seeing, I just want to see head nods. I want,
That's what my question was, and I guess.
so I just like, I feel like I've got like 3 guesses on SDCs as being a odd or goal, but I need more than that. It could be up there.
we, like Isaac said, we always review the SDCs after the plan has been complete.
Whether it's a goal or not.
It's
we're
gonna
do
happen.
it.
They're not spending money and time on it, so.
Okay.
Does it have to be, is it part of the SOP?
It would be, I mean, you guys would recognize that it's something that I would recognize, so. Yeah.
Point of clarification, if it's standard operating procedure that this is gonna happen, does it then need to be a goal?
Sometimes, yes.
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
Money.
If it's gonna be a very.
Sometimes, yes, because
big-
it does take a lot of time, effort, and money, and something you have to approve. And so it's also a part of staff trying to let you know what it is we work on and how we manage our time too. So if we are recommending something for the list, even if it is standard operating procedure, it's because it's a bigger project, it's a big deal, and we want you to understand that that's on our plate.
Then for bowling, they'll give us.
So don't
updates.
add 3 more goals because you know this big one's already.
Kind of like ARPA. ARPA needs to be on there because it's so much.
Right,
We're
we
gonna
can
do it,
anyway.
absolutely, but it's so big and so impactful. We want to know that it's gonna be a big deal.
Well, I think the difference is like, this is a discrete project.
It is,
Yeah.
yes.
And this is not just part of.
Some day-to-day thing.
So I think that's. Okay, so I guess. So can someone give me the definition of what 4.3 is, improved funds? Like, what is that?
So it's like, so Dave, so the initial one is create a funding mechanism for parks maintenance and development, and Dave proposed
Yeah, it's
to
maintenance funds.
improve funds.
STCs are not
Right, those are
for maintenance,
capital.
those are for capital.
Understood, okay.
There's two,
So,
yeah.
There's 3 funding mechanisms for your parks. You got your SDCs, right? You got your general fund, but then in the parks, it's subcategorized by your capital and your maintenance. And so we segregate that in the budget for capital improvements, anymore $5,000. But then you also have, and you should be tracking what your maintenance costs are, and we do. And so just recognizing and improving on those individually should be on the radar. It's just because you're building parks doesn't mean you're maintaining them. So if you keep those visual, you can see where your health of your whole parks department is, if that makes sense.
Here are old goals, 88 was 4.4.
How that's-
4.4 in our old goal.
How that's impactful is when you're looking at a bucket of money, if your operation costs are increasing, that's taking away from your capital. So recognizing and building on both of those. Because your capital side of it may be a water levy someday where you can't do that for maintenance. So you kind of want to keep those separate. Does that make sense?
I'm just trying to wrap it around like in the context of it being a goal. So how is it actionable? How is it measurable? So it sounds how I'm sort of processing what you're sharing is like examining the budget and doing analysis of where things are falling short.
I'm
and-
only recommending it stay on for this coming year because I think that council's gonna have some hard decisions, as I said, about the general fund.
Sure.
And so acknowledging this is a component of those decision-making things is something that should be on the radar. If you don't want this as a goal, that's okay.
Yeah.
But
Don't forget about it.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be like 100%. So I think I might need to like go through one by one and just get like show of hands of whether we need to have it as a goal or not. So. Again.
Is there something that can be done, though, other than us just acknowledge it and keep that in mind? But is there something that like you can do to say, hey, here's some options for an alternative additional funding?
I know. I mean, in some regards, no. It's going to be how council prioritizes the spending of the general fund. And so this is just something that should be on the radar when you're making those decisions. Like, if you increase police, it's going to come at the cost of the parks. How do you guys want that to happen?
Maybe I can provide some clarity. There is a document that will be produced that we can report back on. It's an SDC methodology update that will be completed. It's a standalone document. It's going to then specify what our SDC rates for parks should be. We will have work sessions on it as it's moving through the process lately.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm hearing,
I know,
I'm hearing
you guys
these
are-
questions is 4.3.
You guys,
We're
we're talking
talking
about two
about
different ones.
Yeah.
He's talking about.
Yeah, I'll also answer.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you feel like you got your question? Did you get your question answered around?
It was around SDC.
It was about
but
I
maybe I
yeah,
missed
I
it.
heard
Okay,
that.
so, okay, let's go, so for point of
I heard
clarification,
STC, so
I
let's,
do
let's
think
go
it's
around and,
working.
because what I heard around was like, there wasn't consensus on whether or not you wanted to put it up here on the board.
Oh,
So that's what, to be clear, that's what we're
So that's
gonna go
what you're
around.
Okay, SDC, yes.
Yeah,
SDCs, yes. SDCs, yes.
okay. That's on that. Okay.
The question was around. the-
Do we still have it? Is there still a question around the maintenance?
Yeah, I would like to talk.
Okay,
If I
Tyler?
So I just want to make sure, so there's a lot here in this, this described project section. It says evaluate and develop funding mechanism for park development. That's a lot. Shouldn't we just start with analyzing it and getting a report out so that we can all understand it before we get into develop a funding mechanism? The other thing that I think is important here, I just want to throw this out, and Dave, maybe you already have one, but it would be really nice to see what the resource allocation is for each of the parks. Like, this park takes this much time, and how it actually equates to FTEs and the resources that you need, so that in the bigger picture of talking about parks and recreation, we actually have a good idea of what the resources each park takes. And then that might help inform us going forward on where we're falling short and what we need to do.
The master plan, I don't have that description of that, but the master plan tells you what those per acre costs are. And so that work has been done to a certain level, but to say that there's X amount of hours, because we juggle park maintenance based on park events. If there's something coming in Heritage Park at the end of the week, we're gonna hyper focus on it. That's gonna be, so that's kind of a moving target in some ways, but as far as your FTE related to acreage, all of that is very clearly spelled out in the master plan that has been aligned with the city's budget.
Okay, yeah, and I'm also talking like, if we have foul wheels, play equipment, things like that too, like what's our, do we have a plan, do we have an outline, like what those things cost to maintain every year, and obviously as they get older, those things are gonna break, so it seems like all important data points. But anyway, back to the described project, it says evaluate and develop funding mechanism, is that really,
Attainable?
yeah.
Is it attainable? And so one thing about these goals is some of these are 4 or 5 year goals. Like these are ongoing things. So we may not accomplish everything that's on this description, but it'll be recognized in the action.
Okay, so I guess what my question is does council want to focus this more on first evaluating and getting a report on what this looks like before we get into funding?
Or would that be included in the funding discussion anyway?
I mean, it's wordplay, so to speak, in my mind. I mean, how do you describe it? It's like, we're gonna take it to the next level at some point, whether, it's identified here.
I think like just thinking about the outcome here, it's it's thinking about park maintenance, and so we mentioned that earlier, like you've got, this is all around like the capital, but it's like you gotta maintain what you have, and actually, you got acreage in your costs go up. Also, I'm thinking about community livability and conversations around supporting more community events and making the community feel connected. And they mentioned that that takes additional maintenance dollars too. So, so just making sure that that is being covered.
I think it's very important because as we add park stuff, you are gonna have to have more maintenance and we don't have the funding to pay for that, so we might have to go out for a levy, but is this attainable, measurable? Can you give us reports on steps that you are taking to evaluate and develop funding mechanisms?
Yeah, I mean, right now, other than grants for building them, I don't know. I mean, we're working out of the general fund. We get whatever is left over after the other prioritized things stuff. We have to work within that. We actually reduced the parks budget last year, and I'm afraid this year's probably gonna happen with that. I mean, I don't know yet. We're gonna start working on that here in the next 3 months. We'll have a better way of telling you, but I don't know with those.
Sorry, parks.
So, it's the per general funds throughout the categories, and so can a goal be, just throwing it out there, can a goal be, how do we explore funding for the general fund that will support all of these departments and all of this growth? I don't know, I mean, maybe it's too general, but I think we should, I put in my mind, I think we should look at options of supporting or funding the general fund.
I'm not the person that speaks on this behalf, but my understanding is our hands are tied. There's.
Well,
Just
I,
operating levies and.
Yeah.
To sell an operating levy to the public, vote on it, we're gonna have to have probably something pretty specific.
There's not
So
enough
definitely
grants.
operating
You're really stuck with levies. I mean, and you can't raise your tax rate. And so there's,
But they're like.
You do
park-
fees,
can
I
do
mean,
park fees.
I don't know that a whole report's needed for that. I mean,
You
you
could do fees,
do
yeah.
fees.
But operating levies are probably gonna be your most realistic option for a general fund, department, if you wanna do like
Anything.
O and M type things.
Well,
Yeah, and then, but then you are kind of living and dying by that operating levy because you staff up, usually they last for about 5 years, you staff up and you add capacity based on that levy, but if you lose it, then you're cutting back.
They have to be recertified every 5 years.
I think you're gonna wanna look at your urban. That has a huge impact on what money flows into the city, so keep that thought in mind.
Okay.
When you have that conversation.
Okay, and so like thinking about the how of the funding, those are a lot of different options that you will consider later on. So what I'm hearing is that we should keep it because there's agreement that we need to be funding.
I would cross off development, though, like you said, you're not gonna develop new parks. It's gonna be for improvements.
Right.
4.3 was specific to me.
Yeah.
That's what.
Right.
And then that means throughout the year, you're gonna look for ways to increase our funding for maintenance. Are we gonna find more money to improve our maintenance?
Once again, my hands are tied. I mean, it's hard to just go out and raise funds from where we're at. If there's a capital project that you can assign, that's when a grant's eligible. But I'm unaware of any grants for just how you keep them.
There are no grants. There's no grants for maintenance.
There's really no grants for O and M, it's all capital.
Yeah.
Could we add a fee if somebody wants to reserve the
Gazebo.
So that actually gets that gets problematic because you lose your recreational immunity when you do that.
You charge the park,
If you charge for the facility, then your discretionary immunity is gone.
Your recreational immunity goes away if you charge for park
Yeah.
use. So we would lose that altogether.
about the parking.
Same thing.
Well,
I think it is.
I don't know
I
about
don't know.
parking might be different, but I'm just saying like park use, we looked into
Like
that.
parking kitty?
It didn't make sense.
Park at Chapman, those charging the park.
You know, those are discussions that you guys can
Yeah.
reopen, but I will tell you, over the years, we've had those discussions, and the council's outside then was, people already pay their taxes.
Yep.
We're double charging them
Yep.
for a public event.
So all I'm saying though, it doesn't sound like we're gonna look for additional funding mechanisms for maintenance and take it off.
But there's a discussion about like it needs to be paid for.
So that's a budget discussion.
It's a budget discussion.
I would agree.
experience budget discussion.
Yeah.
But we need to have some work sessions and things ahead of budget meetings
Yeah.
before that.
It also sounds like we need to have a conversation about the urban renewal, which maybe solve some of these issues too. It sounds like we're creative. Just focus on having that conversation and see where we land.
And it also sounds like a community engagement conversation.
So community, urban renewal brings some more money into our general fund, and then we gotta decide where that money can go. It might go to maintenance, it might be earmarked for something else. Goal, and then we would focus on it.
Okay. We okay to move on to infrastructure? Okay. I'm gonna go through both my lists here. Okay. So I have 1.5.1 is, well, now I'm all confused.
Yeah.
So you have it was for your city facility master plan. And that you want to update it to say that it's complete. So we want to complete the master plan.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that we can agree that we can update it to just say complete. Okay. All right. So. Complete master. Okay. 2, capacity upgrade for the wastewater treatment facilities. It looks like this is mostly done. No?
Several more years of.
Oh, completed 90% of the.
It's ongoing.
It goes until
Okay, so
2028.
So 5.2 is ongoing, so it should stay.
Yes.
Moving that along.
Okay, 5.3.
Looks like they're
We're recommending adding this because water hasn't been touched on specifically, and just that way you guys kind of have a status. You'll see that action plan on what we're doing related to water specific projects. So this is just for transparency to you guys. Hey, what's going on? Kind of, as Council Miller earlier was curious of where we're at. This will give you that.
Okay, so this would be a new one around water infrastructure. See.
I think they made it 5.8.
Yes, I just would like to see it worded. When we say address, like we're gonna make this goal, keep it actionable, measurable. What are you just being more specific?
Well, once again, these titles are irrelevant to the content and the action plan. I mean, I don't know what terminology you would like to see, but we're addressing it as in we're identifying the problem and we're coming up with a plan. That's what the action plan was.
Identify and come up with a plan.
And we'll see that in our final project paperwork, see some
When
of
you see the
that.
action plans, that's where.
I think that's what she was saying. Identify and come up with a plan for.
And that will be in the body of the plan. So
And then what, so not to be redundant here, but what would be the outcome? They can say what the outcome of, if you're addressing your aging water infrastructure, what is that?
well, but that outcome will be in the text in the action plan.
We haven't done the work that addresses it. Like,
Yeah, but so what's the direction that council's getting? So like, what's the purpose of having this goal?
The need assessment.
Not necessarily like what it is, but it's like, why would you do this?
To have a needs assessment report.
We're splitting hairs on words. I'll think about that a little bit.
Is it to make the plan?
No, we have plans.
I have a suggestion, could it just be implement the water master plan and complete projects accordingly? Because, or if
But
it's
not everything we do is around that master. plan.
true, I mean, because what we have coming up this year, for instance, just one of the projects is a new 3 million gallon water reservoir will be under construction this summer.
This terminology has been okay for all the previous years that we have this,
Okay.
so that's why it's.
Okay.
Well,
What
that's being
done
done before.
The word address has been in the same historical.
We've been doing these for, I mean, I've been doing it for 7 years.
But there's nothing been underwater before, and you guys have just done it all. Now we want it to go, so
I proposed this for the transparency so that you guys are be educated on what's going on. So you'll have something to read.
there'll be a new well. We're looking at new well, the reservoir. There's gonna be a bunch of things going on. So your framework is 6-7 years, right? Ongoing.
Could we just say update
It's
aging
forever.
infrastructure, water
The reality
infrastructure?
is it's forever. But you have some major things going on right now, so it's like. I mean, you could do this. Like I said, you constantly, every year have to replace part of your city. There's never gonna be that stage where we can just sit tight, so.
And perhaps, David, it could mirror the language for the wastewater, just say capacity upgrade for water infrastructure.
But that's not what it is.
You don't feel that's adequately. Okay.
All right, how does, so I want to hear a little bit from council on keep on
Maybe
adding
this
in
just don't
as
need to
like.
be here. See that, I guess.
I mean, I'm actually okay with, or address, and then you just, as on completion, those are the outcomes.
Yeah.
Completed, this project completed.
What I'm saying is, what I'm hearing is that, I know that it's been done like this before, but I think this council just wants to define it since we were asked to define our goals and have outcomes. So I guess we're not saying, we're asking what those are.
That definition will be in the action plan, as you say. So the term addresses just that we're addressing all aspects of the water system.
One of
So
the
maybe that
problems,
should be the word, I don't know.
One of the problems we continue to have with this exercise is not a general clear understanding by everybody of what is standard operating procedure, something that we do all the time versus actual council goals. I don't know how to address that. We don't have the time to do that today. But what I am continuing to feel and hear is not everybody's on the same page as far as, the standard operating procedures that, Dave and Public Works just does every day and is always considered or versus what is a council goal. To me, a council goal is something that's kind of special that's outstanding for the year. That's not a normal thing from daily operations of different departments of the city. So at some point, we probably should have that conversation, that exercise, so that we're all on the same page.
I think for at least how I think about it is for a council goal, does it direct staff to spend a significant amount of time on something? And is there funding tied to it? Those are the two things that always are at the front of my mind.
Is it everything?
Could I ask for point of clarification? When you say in significant amount of time, how do you define that?
I
Like,
guess so it's like outside of our normal, right? So it's like, to your point, standard operating versus special project. Like the 50-year plan, that's a special project, right? Like it's taking a lot of our time and resources. And that's why we took off the other one related to support and monitor Easter Court, right? Because we're doing that anyway. So it's just kind of the difference in magnitude, I think.
The other thing is too, is that sometimes,
Yeah.
Here,
Sometimes it's a real fine.
also, sometimes I don't feel like it's as easy to say is that because it's standard operating procedure, that it shouldn't be on the list. And the reason I say that is because something like a master plan, you have to have them, right? They're state mandated, you have to update them every 20 years, but they take a ton of time, a ton of effort, a lot of money.
Yeah.
So that should be on the list, even though we have to do it. So
I totally understand like large
Yeah.
projects that have to occur every so many years.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
that, I totally get. I'm just trying to sort of really thread the needle of the difference of what's significant versus when I hear it should be on your radar. Well, we're gonna do it anyway. So I'm just trying to understand like, well, what is it? And then how is that our goal? Because if it's our goal as council to direct staff, that's why I'm just trying to understand more of the detail to understand how it's significant and how,
my goal today is to update our aging water infrastructure. Don't just go out and fix with little breaks, I update it. And this is how he's been updated.
This was just gonna give you an annual update of what we're doing on those hundreds of thousands of dollars being spent projects. We're not talking about, it's a little more than that at this level. I mean, if there's no desire, if you feel like you're already in the know and you don't need these, that's okay. I mean, this was just trying to throw something out there for you. If you feel like you're already in the know enough. I mean, we do try to be, every time there's one of these decisions made, we're coming before you for your approval. So it's not like we don't know. This was just an action plan to pair with. It's a wasted effort that isn't valuable. Our time can go somewhere else.
Right. These are all addressed in the budget. So those, you'll see them in the budget goals in there. So also gives you simply where they reported in the budget document.
This is
Yeah,
something that
can we
could,
do, sorry, let's say one more comment, and I'm gonna do a show of hands, and then we're gonna break and for lunch, then we're gonna come back.
this is something that we could for the moment, and then once we get through the ARPA, then maybe we create this roadmap, action plan, or whatever.
Okay, so I guess what's on the table is like add it now or add it after ARPA. Okay, so I wanna go around the room and I just wanna hear now or after ARPA, and then we're gonna break. Is that after the ARPA discussion?
No, the ARPA goal.
After that's complete.
After it's done.
After ARPA is complete.
After the reservoirs bill, after all those projects that are on that ARPA specific infrastructure work. 2 years.
2 years. 2 years. Okay, I started with May 1, so
Now.
down.
I see after ARPA.
Still have more questions, so I just need to hear what else council wants to say.
Well, Dave, is there anything over the 2 years that's pressing that this relates to, or can we do it after ARPA, be completely fine?
We have, besides ARPA, we're working on other projects. Right now, we're in the design stage. Will we have plans ready to go last?
I just need to know if you need this now or can I wait for 2 years?
I don't need it ever. I mean, I'm gonna do what I'm gonna do. This is for you.
There it is.
Not mine. I know. what
I'm
I
just
work
trying to
on.
determine if 2 years is a problem or not.
This is for your benefit.
He's
He's
gonna do it no
gonna
matter
do it.
what.
I have a word plan that I'm going off. Of. I know what needs to happen to this city to sustain. This is your document, okay?
I'm gonna take it off and go after ARPA again.
I'm fine with it now, just like the one above it, wastewater treatment, it's the same thing, but it's something different. Dave may not be here tomorrow, and then I want the next guy to be working on these as well. I mean, it's maybe not addressed to me, it's update aging, but I want him to go out and, he's gonna do it anyway, but I want us to direct him, go out and get a new salt well, go get a new reservoir, look at those things, those are things I'm asking for him.
I would be fine now. It's not creating any additional work for you if it's already.
I recommended this one, but if there wasn't the appetite, that's okay.
Megan? Okay, I have consensus that we're gonna have it now, just because the point is that already continuing, it needs to continue to be a priority, so. for disruption. Okay, all right, so let's take like 10, 15 minutes to like grab food. I think we all agree that we're gonna do a working lunch, and then we'll come back and we'll finish this up. Okay, does that sound good? Right. So let's come back at maybe 12:50. 12:50? Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I do have to leave. I mean. So I think like if I do like it either by 1:15, that would probably be okay.
I don't know, I think are we off?
Yes, goes to budget.
Not yet. I haven't been able to go there.
Lunch is ready.
Oh, I've lost a few. Okay, we're going, that's good. That's fine. We need more sustenance, get through the rest of the day. So I was looking at the list and we have in terms of so coming back to infrastructure, I think there's 4 more to discuss and then we'll finish up our discussion by talking about any new items to add. Okay? All right, so we're just gonna move on, we're gonna keep moving. So we talked about the water infrastructure, so then we're on to 5.4, around the TSP. So the suggestion is to update the TSP, CIP, and transportation SDC.
That's in work right now.
And it's in the works right now. All right. Sure. And we'll just give it a minute. Yes.
What, sorry.
Okay, just to reorient us to where we're at. So, under infrastructure, we're at 5.4 in your, staff recommendations for the TSP, so update, the TSP, CIP, and the transportation SDC, system development chart.
So we're saying it's on well.
I would suggest that, so you'll get the closeout for the action plan.
Okay, yes.
Okay, and then I heard that for yes. Kim, were you able to hear that? Where we're at? Okay, so we're just kind of getting back to where we're at. With the infrastructure, so we're at 5.4. So update, the recommendation is to update the TSP capital improvement plan and transportation. Megan? Okay, all right, so that would be 5.4. That's 5.3. All right, so 5.5 is the complete ARPA funded infrastructure projects. I can probably follow. Okay, so. It's a huge jump.
Are we getting close to finishing anything? I mean, it's,
Yes.
they all take time.
So DC three is going to bid in the next couple of weeks for the pumps and then plumbing. Once that's done, so by summer, that will be fully operational. Biosolids dryer is set for delivery in May, and so we'll be working on construction this summer. In the fall, we did get an extension officially on that project, so that took some relief, or added some relief since we now have till the end of the year. Yeah, so everything's moving forward. The reservoir is in design and it'll go to bid in the next couple of months. The salt wells, we just had the pre-con yesterday for drilling that, so they're gonna start next month. So, yeah, they're all moving.
Yeah, so they need to be completed by what?
September 2026 is the final deadline on the last project.
Okay, so we're just gonna put it as continue?
Yeah.
Okay, and then, so 5.6, implement projects identified for funding by fuel tax dollars. Where are we on now? That,
I'm gonna kind of defer to council whether you guys want to keep this as an action plan. We're doing it. There is a roadmap, so to speak, identified. When the fuel tax was presented for vote, there was a list of projects and we're still on track with that. We are also grabbing some low hanging fruit projects such as First and Maple has been designed. We'll got to bid. I wasn't on the initial fuel tax project. But after that's done, we're going to be putting our focus, unless directed otherwise by council, back to the area around the Grandma School on buying and third place. It's just going to take a few years to save the money to afford those projects. So.
I don't care about it being on as a goal. I mean, we have a gas tax that pays for sidewalks and it's a 10-year. It expires in 2031.
I would prefer that it be removed because everybody, I mean, it was a tax, everybody knows what the purpose of the tax was. Public Works is fulfilling what the objective of the goal was. For me, I don't think it would be achievable.
That's 3 for remove. 4 for remove.
One question I do is gas tax, can we add a cent, can we go out and get another vote for 1, 2 cents for other projects, or does gas tax have to be around transportation? Can you get it for safety and security? Can you do a gas tax for water upgrades? I mean, is there a rule?
I would refer to legal for that.
Yeah.
So I don't remember, but I really feel like it had to be related to transportation was what we learned 3 years
I think on
ago.
ours for sure, because that's what we sold it as, but
Typically taxes do have to be related, but yeah, we should defer to legal. We can,
I specifically asked Peter when he was here, because the question came, I had that question when he was here, so I asked him, and he said, you can't, it has to be related to, that's for your data.
and that explains why you have levies and bonds, because they're for special purpose.
All right, so then 5.7, this is a recommended for a new objective, so this is a core discussion around update wastewater rates and SDC. So similar to like the parks and SDCs, it's like something that staff will be doing anyway.
Yeah, this is relevant to the current status because so many of our projects that were on the previous CIP are nearing completion or in some phase of it. So as those projects come off, that adjusts the rates and to be aligned accordingly, we need to reevaluate.
is this 100% or do you have to come to us about raising wastewater rates? Is this going to cost money too? You have to get.
You will have to hire a consultant to do the calculations.
And we will bring all the increases and things to you.
We come up with-
Yeah, all of these kind of STC rates, all those things will come to council eventually.
It's done often, like every year, every 2 years, because then we just do that.
Our standard procedure is a 5-year update to your CIPs.
We did just do stormwater rate increases, correct? We don't know.
We're usually working on something and it's meant to capture the economic change, like you mentioned earlier with construction costs and things. So you have to do them more frequently.
We show me it's comfortable with adding it. And then there's this new proposed new section around good governance. So things like the charter review or the DEI assessment. So do you guys want to cover that right now, or do you want to cover kind of these items? We talked about this. This one's kind of out there hanging on, and then some of these are just like would be under that good governance. Do we just tackle this if it's kind of like, oh, well, just out there? Sure. Okay. So what I'm looking for here in terms of like whether or not it gets added to the list, just if we talked about explore recreation program and facility feasibility. So is council comfortable with that direction? Does that feel right and relevant? Is it something that we want to add to staff's plate at this time?
Does staff know what that means, or is that enough for them?
Is that something that Parks and Rec can help with as well? Is it something that is there enough?
Where would that fall?
That would fall on staff. And if we would,
Like
if-
which department? Between Atlas and now.
it would be me right now until Larry gets here and we determine. I mean, in the interim, it's not like the work's gonna start tomorrow, right? We still have to write the action plan out, bring them back for approval. So you would kind of like with everything else, you'll see more updates about what we would be proposing to do and approve the actual as raised.
It would be upon the completion of that facility plan, that you would want to go for that. Because that assessment's going to tell you kind of a CIP of how many dollars you need to be looking at to improve all of the facilities. And so I think you would want to lump that into that.
Yeah, when you're looking at adding a capital like a building.
Not to dilute the importance of the Explore Rec program feasibility, but for me, at Explore Rec Center, I think that is very direct, and that it would be really nice just to know what a cost estimate would be, so we can have that on our radar of what a rec center would cost, just so we have that information and we can watch for grants even, or the first step is always understanding how much something costs. So I think if we can put that if we can get that on staff's radar to try to start working on some numbers, just so we have an idea of what that looks like.
So there's the issue of the physical building, but then there's the staffing and ongoing costs. So would that also, I'm thinking like also,
Yeah, I would do land, actual building and ongoing recurring costs. of
and then
course-
would that be like a city run thing, or would that be like a independent organization or a, what does that look like?
I think that's next to the question, and I think there's opportunity there to maybe partner with somebody like YMCA that has expertise in managing a facility like that, but maybe also looking at what it would cost if the city decided that they wanted to staff and run it to operate it as well.
With that, I'm sorry, but with that report that you're mentioning, Dave, would that information come out of that report?
It would likely have, correct me if I'm wrong on that, it would likely have costs associated with purchasing, constructing and things, probably not staffing.
No.
Because they're not gonna know how many people or what your frequency of needs would be. You know, you have
Programming.
somebody there till 8 PM for gym accessibility, or there's so many dynamics there that are unknown at this point.
When would that get done? Estimated time?
Looking towards,
Months out.
yeah, about 4 months away, most likely, yeah.
Megan?
I'm just kind of struggling. It's not that I don't think a rec program or a center is important, but our budget is already so tight. We have no funds to purchase land. We have no funds to build a building. So to look in how much a rec center costs or what it would, I mean, realistically, we're trying to figure out how to incentivize and pay more in our police department. I think unfortunately, this is something that if we don't have, where you create a special district or you go out for some sort of a levy or some bond, like there's no, to me, I'm listening and looking at the list of things that Lori's writing down of what does it cost to run a rec? And like, I don't even think we're in a position, we don't even have the money to buy a piece of land. So I think the timing is not appropriate.
I hear you. And I think what I'm hearing is exploration of what that would look like in order for us to plan. So we can't, obviously, it's not gonna be done within the year. But I think if we don't put, put the seed and then we need to know what we're growing, I guess. Because I think if we don't know what, like, Tyler said initially, before, if we don't know the amount, then we don't know what the plan is or how to raise it.
Is there a way we can get examples from around the state and other states and find out what their YMCA's cost, how much land, how much people? But maybe that's tasked with our Parks and Rec department to do that. Or we can come up with questions of what we want and then they go out and start doing the research because we want to know how much it costs and how many people and all that stuff before we can decide if we want to go out for a bond or if we want to try to partner with the YMCA.
Yeah, I basically what I was gonna say, we're not the only small town that doesn't have the money or resources to do this, so I'd love to see, I think that's the first step, is having staff gather. Just what are other cities our size with our budget doing innovative things? And you could almost just call it exploring recreational opportunities and not just have a focus so much on the rec center. I agree with Megan.
The Rec Center came up a lot in all of our studies. I hear it all the time, but
I think recreational opportunities, I don't know where you're going with that. I think my concern is that could be pretty broad and it could take a lot of time because that's so broad that maybe there's not enough. If we're just looking at, I mean, if we get numbers back that are, buildings are X dollars and operations in this range, how much opportunities are we? I'd prefer it to be a little narrow so that we could get you that initial data. And if you want us to look further, we could do that like as a second step.
I'll let Andrew and then I'm thinking.
Oh, I mean, I just think there's more promise on the recreational programming. You can do programming without a facility.
So maybe title it both then.
Yeah.
I think someone said exploration. I like that because, for example, we're in a building that wasn't here about a year ago in partnership with OMIG or PCC. I'm thinking that a room like this could be recreational for young adults, for families. I know they do things already. And so that can also be recreational. That could be the start of a recreational program. And then in the future, we can look into a separate building.
I was gonna suggest that this goal is explore recreational program and facilities lumped into one because if you don't have the program, what good is the building? Who's gonna use it? If you don't have enough shoe with the right shoe, it's not gonna work. So I would recommend combining.
And you can explore
At
and then
least it's
decide, you don't need, we can't do the facility, but we can do the program.
Yeah, because we've got all the parks that recreation programs could be utilizing, because there isn't. They're not doing that.
You know, I think it would be, I know it's not that realistic, but I think having some sort of estimate numbers would be helpful for the public to realize, like, this is what it would take. I think it would be helpful to see how the grass it is, to be honest. Because you're right, a lot of people keep saying, why can't we just have a rec center? Well, let's show them.
This is where the daycare issue, I think, can come in with being us a daycare desert. And I don't think they're ready yet to give us any specific goals, but they're really working heavily and they're gonna have grants and they'll be coming to us eventually. Where this rec center stuff, I think will help the daycare side too.
Okay, so just show of hands, who's comfortable with explore recreational programming in facility? Great.
Can I
Yeah.
go back to 5 whenever you feel it's appropriate?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay. Following up on some of the discussion for the water infrastructure, I'd like to just maybe retitle it to Water Infrastructure Improvements and Replacement. Would that capture where you're going? A little more specific?
Great. Thank you.
Nailed it.
You have a water master plan? How long when was that done last? 4 years ago?
I think it's technically dated 2020, but we did the work from 2017 to 2020.
Yeah.
It's like Corona.
All right, so then there's this new section that's recommended by staff around this topic around good governance with the charter review and DEI assessment. Staff, do you want to add like more context to that for council to consider?
So around you, goal 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the charter's very old.
That's what I'm, you know.
It's really old. This is partially a recommendation from legal, if I call correct, is that it's been a long time to.
And a charter review has to go out to the voters to finalize it. They have to vote it eventually.
Yep, they do. They can, yeah.
But
They're not, they can be a challenge, but they do need to be done. There's a lot of language to just kind of read it. They can kind of tell it's been like 30 years, 20 years at least.
Jackie, are we gonna wanna be tackling that with a brand new city administrator?
Well, this is about voters and what they want for their charter to be.
this could take a year to review the charter and recommend, and then you have to go out to the voters and get them to approve.
I see what you're saying.
But it has been so long, just like, I think we do need to review it.
Isaac, who's the point person?
Typically, it would be admin, city manager.
Yeah, so it's a good point.
It
Like, I
is.
mean, so
Yeah, we don't
about
think we're
having
gonna have
an
a
interim
city
city
manager until-
manager and then going through a hiring process, is it like maybe something that maybe put on the,
Next
Well,
year.
So that would, I mean, it depends on how long we think it'll take to get a city manager.
Well, based on the
6 months, 9 months.
or you could put it
puts
on,
us-
so another option is that you add it to the list, and then if it doesn't, if you don't quite get to it,
I
you've
like
at least
that.
identified it as
I
a
don't wanna lose
priority.
sight of it.
That's what I was gonna say, is in 9 months from now, we're only gonna be 3 months into these, the fiscal year for these goals. That's 9 whole months in the 24-25 fiscal year.
They go until July.
Right, and so even though we're talking about it 6 months early.
And there could be some late work done with the museum that isn't. There could be some things done in the next 6 months.
Well, going back to the purpose of this is staff time and budget, so there's nothing to prevent us as council members going through the charter now and noting all the things that we have questions about or would like to change. I do think it's more appropriate to do next year with the new city manager at the staff, involving staff at, that level of funding, but there's nothing to prevent us from starting on this now and going through and making notes about what we think should change.
So just focusing on that year, then it wouldn't be talked about until, after July 25.
So we looking at a year and a half, actually.
I would do it now, but understand, we'll gather information, we'll put some money in the budget now, and then when the new one comes on, the next February, March,
You can be
we'll
rolling
be
with
ready
it.
to get going on it. We got money in the budget.
And if it did slide, we would note that in the staff report why, and I think everybody would understand that you know, I think that we have a verbal understanding that you're wanting the new city manager to be here. And I think that makes sense. And so that is noted by us going forward.
Just have to figure out, how do you change your charter? What do you have to do? What is the process?
And is that a May election thing or is that a November?
That's
election?
another thing that that's something the goal allows us to figure
All
out.
right, so
And
maybe
some of
it's
the
like
timings around this.
beginning the process.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, so another one that came up, so we'll do the DEI, it's here, and then it came up as the DEI assessment.
Yeah, so whatever, I mean, we kind of covered it.
Do we feel like there's needs to be further discussion on it? Before, I just want to make sure that there's consensus or majority if we're gonna put it on the list here.
Yeah, so in addition to kind of looking internally at the organization, will that also look at then like delivery of services? Like how are we ensuring that services are delivered in an equitable?
It could, I mean, I think we'd have to talk to a consultant about what they recommend and, you know, I think part of that's about what services we provide. And, you know, from my experience, a lot of the DEI work is centered around like public health type things, you know, typically in counties. A little bit harder when you're talking about like water. But I think for like outreach and things like that, maybe, I think that's a discussion we can talk about what that might cost.
I would,
Because we have to build a scope of work, potentially run the RFP kind of like we had before. So there'd be.
I would just ask if we are gonna do the DEI thing, that phase one be at the staff level to fully understand what the scope would be of how DEI applies to the different areas that the city intersects with. And we have all of that information to make sure that it's not, you know, just like recruitment, hiring, and get a full understanding of how expansive DEI is. And then council makes a decision whether or not we want to move forward with a consultant just because of the expense involved with that.
Other councilors want to
I have a question on it. You know, it talks about our hiring process. Does it then go into who we buy a $2 million piece of equipment from? Do we require them to have that DEI
I don't know if you
hiring
can.
process as well?
I mean,
Is it only developed with our hiring process? And
I mean, sometimes the way you get it is kind of like we talked about last council meeting with, you know, the COVID businesses, those would be involved. I don't know. I'm not sure to what extent you could ask a contractor to do DEI work to obtain a contract. That's a question for legal.
And so I can speak firsthand to that as working with cities and counties all over the
Yeah, I
nation.
can't imagine.
And some of them do have provisions in there that you would like equal opportunity. But the problem is that some of the things that they throw in there don't apply or conflict with local laws where the company exists. So they're extremely problematic. And then it gets into the whole equal opportunity versus 14th Amendment issue too. So I don't know. That is
I think that's
something
part of what the point of this is that I think DEI is becoming more prominent and we just, as an organization, we need to understand it a little better. We don't have a DEI program. A lot of cities do. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying that like we should most likely be taking the first steps towards
is
a
that
better
something we can
understanding.
do before a full-time city manager comes in? I mean, that's stuff that staff can work on.
Yeah, I like to concur with that. And just it's understanding and then doing assessment. So.
Understand, okay.
So,
understanding what the assessment would entail. Is that
no,
or-
so I'm thinking the whole DEI purpose is to assess and understand.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of, goes under that, the whole, you know, being equitable and diverse and the whole thing.
So could something be like conduct DEI assessment staff,
Yes,
staff level?
as a city, as a whole, absolutely. And it could be under the employment, it falls under procurement, it falls, DEI.
So internally though.
Internal,
Right.
so
Internal
internal
staff level.
DEI
Exactly.
assessment, okay.
do you know
What
what
you
you
need
need to do that?
You mean from direction?
Like.
Deliberative services.
That's something that, I mean.
Okay.
that-
Other points of clarification or discussion before we talk about whether or not it needs to be added as a council goal?
Well, it would require a consultant.
Okay, so there's costs associated with that.
Yeah, because we don't have
I'm
we don't
thinking
have the understanding capacity to do the assessment. None of us are DEI specialists.
Yeah, so I'm thinking about like you're directing funds.
Yep.
To this, when there's other things on the list that also require funds.
Could I just ask one question? I'm not overly familiar with all of that. I'd have to do a little research, but how would that be used or what would be the applicability of that? Because it kind of aligns with your COVID discussion in the last council meeting to me in some ways that, you know, you're looking for equal opportunity things. So I'm just trying to understand how that relates or how we would use that once it's.
There is, so other cities have already implemented like Bend, City of Hillsborough, Lake Oswego. If you want, I'm not the DEI expert. I mean, I do, there's a consultant that do that just because I'm a person of color doesn't mean I'm a DEI expert. But it is, I see that it's important, not only how we, I guess, what consultants come in and just like they assess land use, any other things that we use consultants for, they see what we're doing, they give input and they give advice and rolling out a DEI plan
So-
if that's needed. So if it's not needed, then of course they say, no, you guys are good. You guys are good to go. But if it's something that's needed that we need to know about, I think they will address that.
They produce recommendations, and some of them are simple, like changing he and she in policy manuals today. Some of it is about the kinds of language you use or in your hiring material. So like we have a phrase, something in there that says, certain groups are, typically they don't apply for these kind of jobs, but we encourage you to look at your experience and maybe apply even if you don't. It's kind of, it depends. Or again, the COVID stuff, it can be small.
I'm just trying to understand better what the desired outcome is so that we know what direction to move it forward.
Andrew.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, it's definitely gonna come up with any grants we apply for ground horn, for example. It's a big part of the parks, inclusive activity, adaptive activity. We won't get a grant if we don't have a piece of the grant.
Yeah, they're part of the statewide goals. So.
Is there a chance we can get some data from PCC or have them help us to say what cities our size, what do the cities our size do for DEI?
Well, yeah, so I've got a whole network
Instead
of,
of hiring an expensive consultant.
I mean,
Yeah, it's clear that there's a lot of confusion about what it is and what all it entails. If we could somehow disperse, get that information, get everybody on the same page, exactly what DEI means and what it applies to, and then we can assess next steps, that's what I would prefer, because I have so many questions about it, but I would like to be informed and educated on it before I move to spend money on a consultant and using, I think that's an excellent example, seeing if PSU has somebody that's already a subject matter expert in it that would help us out, create charge. That'd be
So
awesome.
one option, you could, so you can either have it listed as a goal, you could put it in, I didn't officially make a parking lot over there, but we could put that as a topic for future discussion.
you
I'd like
could-
to see it on the list officially. It sounds like we're being kind of held to another standard and going
Okay,
to be required to have this work done to move forward on projects.
so
So-
Megan, we just need to take a vote because we're just getting close on time, so, not a vote, I'm sorry, show of hands of, so Megan, yes. Yeah, yes. Okay. All right, so we'll have that there. All right. Then we have this talk around mission statement and vision, mission, vision, values, identifying those or updating those for the city. Thoughts on if this would need to be added as a council goal?
I'd like to see it, but I don't know about a goal, maybe with our visioning statement after 50-year plan is over, we can then look at those.
Would that be next year then?
Probably.
Next year, maybe take for
It's not
next year?
necessarily, going back to staff time and funding issue, it's not really something that necessarily would take staff time or funding, so it's something that I think council could, if we want to look at it a little bit later as we move along. The mayor can always form a group or a committee or whatever, and we can work on that. So I don't think as far as the relevance of council goals, I don't think that it's necessary.
All right, I'm gonna put it over here just so we don't lose sight of it. Documented. All right. So this analyzing funding mechanisms specifically for the general fund. I mean, we talked about it, it's there's limited options there around an operating levy or additional fees that you could pass, adding fees to your utility bill. I don't know if this is something that you want to
I don't think
explain
of
more
anything
formally.
specifically. If we decide we need more for police, then yes, or if we need more for a water or a park, then we can, but nothing to specifically start.
So it's it's covered here.
Yeah, we first have to identify needs before we can get to that stuff, but I don't think we've identified precisely what our needs are, so.
I think so.
Yeah.
Then there's this talk around just general fiscal stability.
Yes, I don't know, I'm kind of confused where we're at, so what was the, Can we just rewind a
Yeah,
little bit?
so where we're at in the process is that we've gone through all of the goal areas, and then there were some new addition, like proposed ideas that came up off on the side. And so I want to go through and check in and with council to see if that's something that you want to add.
That's the either one that you.
This one says analyze funding mechanisms for the general fund.
I think, I've been hearing that all day, that specific one, so I don't know where it would be on there, I think it would be just the economy as a whole, but.
So, I mean, like technically you guys put it in here in terms of funding, looking at funding options for police.
But it's not just for police.
It's not just
You-
public.
Well,
So,
the mechanisms available are fees and taxes, and those are inherently political. And so kind of what Tyler was, I think, getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, was that when you're dealing with those issues, you kind of have to identify the issue because it's political. To assess it, to assess the fee appropriately or assess the tax, depends a lot on what issue you're trying to fund. You can't just do a general, typically, I don't know if I've ever heard of a general operating levy for general government. But
I think it's in there. Parks, if we decide on Grabhorn, then we're gonna have to figure out a way to analyze funding. If we decide we need it for the police, we would do it there.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
You can, 2.911's reviewing theirs, and that's just a generic operating optional levy, so you can't do it for multiple operating things within a government structure. Yeah, it'd be an optional levy.
Just a question for council. Do you all feel like you have a thorough understanding of the general fund? I mean, do you understand how it's brought in, where we're spending it? Do you feel like you're completely in the know? I mean, and this is gonna be more of the next city manager's task than mine, but I mean, do you need a work session to talk about it? Do you need to understand it a little better? Do you need to see some numbers so that,
I think,
what would help you?
yeah, I think we're back to the comment that I made earlier. We really need to understand where our gaps are before, and I think that's where you're going with this, if I'm correct, is we really need to understand where we're deficient before we can start talking about options. I think we're getting too.
I would like a half-hour work session, because then we'll learn, but also the community, if they're listening and reading, they'll understand. Where is the one person said, if we go to the county, then our taxes go down. So they have no understanding. And that's what our general fund, yeah, our property taxes, where's that go? How's it, what is it funding here?
That's always been something that I wanted to see at the ATM.
Mhm.
Understanding of the taxes, and because I always get the people call public works like, I pay my taxes and my street isn't. Well, no, your taxes don't pay for your streets. You know, people don't always understand what their property taxes are buying them. And so I think that educating that on that, my question was, do you all feel like you're in the know, or do we as staff need to provide you with some more information of that? You know, like real high and low, or this is what you get each year, this is what it increases by. Here's your expenses for each department. I mean, just, it's pretty basic for us to go through the budget and just give you those 10,000 foot kind of numbers if needed.
If you're open to it.
Yeah.
Sorry. And I was gonna say, I probably have 12 notes to this effect. You know, so I'm trying to figure out how do I communicate this better to you guys? And part of it is going to be, and I'll have this for you for the 20th. I'll get you some information for the 20th. Let's say we didn't have enough renewable electric, how would that affect, you know, our funding? You know, and so that's kind of our first thing, because that does eat up some of our funding in the general fund. But that doesn't mean that's the solution. You know, we want to say what are the options? So I've got a bunch of notes. I'm going to go back and try and put some information together for you.
Yeah, that would be great.
You know, and the same thing with the general fund dollars, where do they go?
I think we need to know, we understand, and therefore we can be either innovative on our decisions.
So I feel like I've documented that here in general fund work session, council education, but it's not really rising to like a goal. So just in the interest of time, is bikeability around TSP, but is like contained in the TSP?
So I guess my question is, if the work has been done and the like streets that would be best served kind of being designated bikeways, if that's already been completed, is it possible to get them like denoted for the community?
What do you mean?
Like, get a little bike guy on the, yeah,
Get a bike.
yeah. Get the bike guy on the ground, right?
I mean, it's not always that easy. There's road widening, there's right-of-way acquisitions, there's.
That would be like lane. I'm talking about like shared, so they've got them a lot in Portland, right? They're just routes that are designated as like a little bit safer for cars and bikes to
I
share.
think the TSP denotes that specifically. I know what you're talking about. Clinton and Portland and things are designated that way. We're not that big. I mean, we don't have enough streets to provide true corridors. You don't have neighborhoods with enough influx of people trying to get on a bicycle to, from point A to point B. Therefore, that's not really applicable to Scappoose. I mean, our TSP is based on some bike lanes on a couple of corridors, just to give you separation from the vehicular traffic for safety.
Yeah, so I guess I would say to schools would be important and to parks, right? Like, can we have some designated roads? And it's more, it doesn't change anything with the traffic pattern, it just brings awareness. Or it does like consolidate bikes to, more frequent, I guess, lanes of travel. And then for cars, it just increases awareness about, hey, there may be more bikes on this road than other roads in town.
That's something we can transportation we need on.
The other thing too is there could be considerations, I'm just thinking in terms of, any kind of engineering concerns, any kind of, what are best practices around that. So I can't say right now, right here, what that looks like. We'd have to go back and look at those routes and look at, is there any low hanging fruit? Are there streets currently that are wide enough to support those bike lanes where they have been identified?
I'm not sure about bikes.
I do want to.
I know where you're going.
Hold on, we just don't have a ton of time, and I just want to check in with the rest of the council, if it's like, we're having a good discussion, but I'm hearing it from one, so I just want to check in if it's something that is needs to be added to the list right now, or if it's just something for future discussion that we can add to our.
I understand it, and I think it's a good idea, but maybe like in our transportation department, not in a goal setting. Because we don't want to change anything, we just want to promote what is our safest routes. You don't change the street, don't even put anything, it's just telling the kids, try not to ride on this one, it's too narrow, there's too many cars. If you're gonna ride your bike to school, maybe go over on this street. Just simple things maybe to help.
Other counselors?
All right. I do have one more. I asked if we were gonna do
Yes.
news for public safety, and there was one I wanted to have folks consider. I don't think we really have, and maybe we do, have a community, emergency preparedness plan
We do.
We
for
do.
the community.
We absolutely do.
So what all does that cover? Like, say the power goes out for, 3 days, sub freezing temperatures, like, do we have a backup generator at a school that will serve as like a place for people to go?
We are not responsible for the schools. We have those provisions for our city facilities.
Okay, so like, if that needed to be communicated to people, like what to do in the event of an emergency or something like that, we have that plan already in place.
We have that plan in every one of our facilities.
I think there's a miscommunication here. She's talking about like when.
Where
the school
citizens
meets-
gather or something?
Yeah, where,
like if
where the
you-
school becomes a shelter.
That's not
We
us.
don't have to shelter here.
That's not.
Well, if your water system goes down and we can't get any water, what's the city supposed to do?
I would ask if this is a goal-related issue, or is this something you want a work session on to understand this stuff? Because this, I'm not seeing how this ties to goals.
So I'm talking about like public, because this is under the public safety, like if there's a natural disaster, what as a community what can the city support in terms of, getting people basic necessities?
That's above us. We would be calling Red Cross and FEMA, and we would be just.
You do have a plan, you are gonna call them.
We do have,
That's our plan.
we do have a plan. But our facilities, our capacities are gonna be just as damaged as everybody else's. We don't have, you've seen city, we don't have a building that's earthquake ready. We don't have the things that Portland or Tigard or Hillsborough does. I mean,
So what I'm hearing is like a desire for maybe some community awareness.
I was gonna say like establish communications with the community on how to.
I think that if I may, I think a goal could be that we just understand what our emergency management process would be or something like that. I made this comment earlier that we need to have Columbia County Emergency Management Director come in and educate us on what their plan is, because that does inherently include the cities, but I think to Kim's point, though, we're trying to make sure that we, in the event that something like that does happen, we do have a place where there can be mass shelter that will have, a generator backup, even though it's not the city's responsibility. What I understand is that the city has emergency preparedness plans for the facilities in our operations,
It's not the
but
people.
we don't have emergency management plan for taking care of our citizens if something like that happens.
Yet there
That's-
are those plans in place with the fire district, so it's just a matter of people communicating.
Yeah.
Right, so.
Okay, so maybe there's just like an opportunity for a work session topic?
Yeah.
This one?
I totally agree.
All right, I wanna, so it's 1:45. It's 1:45. And I know I did promise that we would talk about any other items that need to be added, but I just want to do just a quick check with the group, like, does this feel full right now, like reasonable, feasible? Just checking in with staff and council in terms of like everything that you have going on right now with having an interim city manager come in and a new city manager transition.
That seems a lot.
Does this feel like that's a full plate? Or are there,
It's more of a buffet.
yeah, there's a lot. Okay, so I'm like, there's a lot there. If there's anything that perhaps we want to add, just like in terms of like over there on that list of our parking lot, like for future discussion, I think I would recommend that. Yes, Megan?
Mr. Mayor, I don't know what your plan is, in terms of reviewing what the two committees gave us. Because sometimes the goals they have translate into a staff goal, but in my opinion, I don't see that specifically with,
I sat in on all their meetings and I didn't get a sense that they were asking us.
yeah.
They talked about, EDC had talked about asking us to do a goal. But I don't think they did ask us to specifically do any goal that would help them. Parks really was on the grab board and grants. And we are addressing that. We'll talk and decide if that's the route that we want to go.
So with the EDC, develop a comprehensive downtown strategy to present to city council. Do you feel, Lori, that that's something that they would be asking you for assistance with in doing?
My understanding is that they are not asking
Okay.
for staff involvement with that, and that they're, I have said to them, my preference, as opposed to opening up the downtown overlay code language, that we wait to get this TGM grant so that we're doing it really holistically and not trying to rush through those amendments as part of the 50-year plan. Their idea, they do understand that my department is taxed completely until the 50-year plan is completed, at which point they would like to spend their time from now until whenever that plan is done to just look at other cities, gather information, and have sort of some ideas in their back pocket that then they could roll into the grant once we're there.
And then I would just encourage you, sometimes those lines are great and sometimes these committees do start asking staff
Yes.
to start doing things when they did commit to doing themselves. And I would just hope that that would be communicated to the mayor and that boundary would be reestablished since it's not on your goal list.
And what is nice is the mayor does attend our agenda setting sessions now with the PC chair, and that has been very helpful. So I would like that to continue, and then I think that's that built-in sort of check.
We'll know more because I think Carl had a base strategic plan they were going to present. So we'll see what that says. But the grant won't be probably till next year.
That's right,
And so if there is a goal at that time to review next year.
yes.
And the urban renewal grant program, they're going to go out and market it.
Got clarity there. All right, other items?
Well, you mentioned something before, you mentioned something like 4C. I would, I think transportation, I was trying to find the sticky for transportation, can't find it, but transportation between, just, if we're gonna grow, we have to have a better transportation infrastructure. We don't have it right now. And so I'm talking about public transportation.
So I think that might be already a part of this update TFC.
But yeah.
I can see
And public safety.
We're not
Lori?
talking about buses.
I'm sorry?
Are you talking about, you said public transportation.
Public
That's a whole.
transportation, yeah, that's the whole thing.
Oh.
Like buses?
And they're going-
We don't have any.
Well, that's because they don't count it. Yeah, they
Kind of, and if there's something that we, I don't know, I'm just saying, like, conversation, of course, right? Because it does affect our city. And just starting to have those conversations, and I'm not sure if those conversations have been already going on, but if we expect to grow and expand, I think that's a huge, having people be able to move around, is important.
We do, they've presented vendors for additional funding for the public transportation system and people voted it down.
Yeah,
So
well,
That's beyond, yeah, I think what we have the ability to affect change with. Unfortunately.
I have, I think a good goal that we can add here. So as I mentioned before, county has public transit and they have, Columbia County Emergency Management. And then now we have public health too. There's a wealth of information that I don't think this council is aware of, that all three of those department heads are willing to come in here and share. I know because I talk to them every time I go to the county commission meetings, not every time, but I talk to them. And I think we're missing an opportunity to become fully informed and form good relationships with those three bodies. So I think a potential goal here would be, this is, really obtainable, is to invite those directors into a work session where we can have some interaction with them from each of those three departments at different times. I have one other thing, but I'll wait until we get done with this discussion.
So we had talked about, and it had been on a goal maybe 2 years ago, those one-stop meetings with stakeholders. So no matter what's happening, the fire chief always comes in, no matter what's happening, the school board comes in, no matter what's happening, county health department comes in. Should we just, we don't have one-stop meetings on there. Are you fine if those departments, if it goes over there and it's just more of a work session rather than a goal specifically?
Yeah, I don't know that it just needs to be accomplished. We need to have them come into and have interactive discussion, and so that we can learn about what they do, they can learn about what we do type of thing.
And what we need or want communicated to our.
How would that work? You have a group you want to come in, you come and ask me and say, and then I say, yeah, let's get with city and try to schedule them, or do we ask that we get at least 3 counselors, want to hear from them, and then we just try to get them on and work?
Why don't we wait till Larry comes on, and then we can have a discussion with them and get those guys schedules. We can have staff reach out to those departments.
Usually it's just like a head nod from council being like, yeah, we'd like to hear from that person.
I know work sessions are very hard to get,
And they were mapped out like the whole year, yeah.
So you got a group or 2 that you want to come and give a report or tell us if they're doing it.
It would be good to get those guys at least on, I don't think quarterly is necessary, but if we could get them to agree to come in twice a year for updates, so that we can just, I try to do that when I go to county commissioner meetings, so I give you guys updates too. But I still think twice a year would be great if we could get FaceTime with them.
Sometimes we just put them on the agenda too, and that works.
Yeah.
All right.
I did have one, if we're done with this, I did have one other thing. So several months ago, we brought up wanting to look into the flock safety cameras for the city. And it's basically a license plate reader. It doesn't actually take videos or pictures of what's going on. It's a safety tool, and we thought that it was really important to supplement our law enforcement because of the leads and other things that it can provide. I talked to the mayor, and the consensus, at least between the two of us, is we still wanted to pursue that as soon as possible to see if it's a trial first. Is there any interest in, I don't know how, do any of the public safety goals align with that?
I don't know anything about a flock system or like how it would be used or how the PD would want to implement that, so.
I can talk a little bit about it. So the flock system license plate readers that we place around the city, and I had conversations with these individuals, we place around the city. And they can pick up information about license plates and things of that nature. So we did look at it, talked to public safety director, Mr. Jensen, not here today, obviously. First, I thought it was initial free trial, but it's going to take a little more once you, based on understanding, once you lock into the contract after I think a certain amount of time, then it's over a free trial. For us, I think the money we can put for that, if possible, maybe push it down a little bit later, but it really comes down to what the council thinks we good. So we'll have to review it.
So
there's
Go ahead.
So I'll explain really quick because I've researched a lot. So they're basically LPRs, license plate readers, and they are placed strategically throughout different locations of the city. they run plates really quickly and they alert the on-duty officers if any stolen vehicles come into the city. And then also it allows, so if you have a crime that occurs, like say for example at 4 a.m. and we don't have police officers on, they can literally, if they being the investigator can go in and they can say, well, from a ring camera or from somebody that saw it, they saw a black car pass by during this time frame. They can literally go into the database. It only stores it for 30 days because it's a privacy thing. So it only stores them for 30 days, then it wipes it clean. They can go in and say, give me all black vehicles that pass you for this duration of time. So we already know from this time that we started this conversation with Chief McGowan, he did mention at a meeting that he's looking into it. And we did that so that the public would be aware that we were looking into it. We've had several incidents where we think that those cameras probably would have provided very critical evidence to be able to actually solve these, or at least give leads to solve these crimes. So because we don't have very many police officers, we looked at this as technology helps, and that it could be really advantageous to our public safety.
What I'm looking at is there is a cost of, renting them throughout the year and training and what it would cost our police department time and energy. So maybe we'd like to present some information and Mr. Jensen's view, and then we can see if we can answer his questions and if we can get them for free, is it worth it? If we can get the cost down, if we can go in with the school district as well. And if the training is minimal, I mean, there's things that we'd like to maybe pursue to see when does that break-even point make it worth our while?
That's kind of,
So we have 5 minutes left. So I'm gonna put that in as more info, block camera, and something to discuss later with when you have an interim with Chief Jensen to have a discussion. So Megan's hand. So we have 5 minutes left. So I have some recommendations. We talked about having this conversation around what is needing to be successful. Obviously, we don't have time for that right now, but it's a recommendation that it needs to happen at some point, and I think it would be valuable information for the incoming interim city manager and then the city manager moving forward. So just talking about like, what does each counselor need to be successful during this period of change? What staff need to be successful? I think it's a valuable conversation that needs to be had. Then the other piece of it that I want to talk about is that there was also some interest in prioritizing the goals. In the 5 minutes that I have, we can go through and do a show of hands and we can go through each of these and we get a data point. But my question is that a value to council? Is that a value to staff?
it's not a value to us, I don't think. I think we have to be agile and be able to take advantage of opportunities that come up. And if we prioritize, it's going to be really challenging. And then if something is not, yeah, I don't think that would be, we.
So my recommendation would be like, in terms of this leadership transition discussion, that set up a work session and have the discussion around what staff and council members need to be successful and throughout the period of transition, and then just thinking about how you want to communicate with each other and moving the goals and the work of the city forward.
They've been really good now that we decided this year throughout their department head report, they do list if it pertains to a goal. So they show us these are goal things that we have achieved throughout the report.
Yeah, and like, so, and revisiting your team agreement definitely should take place, but like between the transition that's happening with council and with city manager, it's just not all the players are on board. So it's kind of like you'd have to redo that work anyway. And so just an opportunity to talk about that later. So in terms of next steps, what you can expect from us and staff. So we will take all of this information and we'll refine it and work with staff to put it into an action plan and then put it into and have a summary report of today's retreat so that you have it, and then we can further work on that refined action plan with staff, work on the language as needed, and then come back to council for adopting moving forward. Any questions around that?
No, I'm sorry, I have a question for Joe. Have you, the whole liaison, are we gonna have?
I was just talking about that. I will, being that we're gonna probably have another change and I need to get with Maurice on schedule, but I will get with you on liaisons. If there's something you want to change, let me know. If you're fine where you are, I'll assume that you're okay there, but we might make a change too. Or if there's any other groups out there that you think need one. But I'll have that done there. It might be with the new city manager. I want to get with them too.
All right, great. So any other questions? I have one thing that I want to do before we adjourn. Any other questions on process and next steps? Okay, so I want you to look at everything that's up here, and then we're just gonna go around the room and you're gonna give me one word in terms of how you're feeling about the council goals. Feel excited, overwhelmed, undone, or not undone, like unfinished, or those types of things. You just want to get a quick pulse check, so I'll start with Isaac. How are you feeling?
Table that for a second.
Okay, Megan.
Can I pass them back? I'm thinking.
That's a big question.
You can take all, take a moment, unless someone's ready.
From my perspective in my department, it's status.
It's what I'm sorry?
Status quo from my department. I'd say improved.
Yeah, I'm satisfied.
Yeah, I think, having done this exercise previously, I think these are more specific and more attainable than, past. I think we get better basically every year with how we define these.
Approved,
I think it's also clear and faster.
clear.
It's a little overwhelming as a process, but
Yeah.
it doesn't affect, face me the least.
Yeah.
So,
But we'll check with more on that.
They can fix that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's-
Optimistic. One word, reasonable.
Reasonable.
Aligned.
Aligned. Okay, coming back to
I
you.
missed the one word part, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I would say for my particular role in this, probably overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed.
Everything kind of follows through.
Well, with the hiring of city manager and chief, it's gonna be a lot with all this, but that's just for everything, just that's my, to be clear, that's my little teeny lane.
Collaborative.
Yeah, there, I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's still, it's a lot of work to do. There's a smaller city and a smaller staff, and then you're going to like, you're on a city manager, you know, like a permanent city manager at this point. And so I think just the important things to take away from this is just having patience and grace, you know, that sometimes it takes a little bit of time for these processes to get started. So, and see progress. So, you know, I just think continuing to have solid communication between the team and trust and open communication is going to be really valuable moving forward. And like I said, just try to prioritize that, that team discussion. Well, thank you all very, very much.
Thank you.
You did a lot of work today, and thanks for giving up your lunch. And we will be in touch. All right, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
And I don't think it's raining anymore, so that's good.
Real quick. Team agreement.